So about a year ago, after 10 years of some close friends and family members imploring me, encouraging me to invest, not leave my money just in a savings account, I did it. And I was so proud of myself for finally taking that step. And then yesterday, the once a year is all I plan on, meeting with my financial advisor. And no surprise probably to many of you who pay attention to this a lot more than I do, but I lost money. I lost money. And I was like, the whole rest of the day, I felt silly. Like, good timing, Peter. But fortunately, I did not feel unhappy. So I was grateful. I didn't know what I'd expect, but I wasn't unhappy. I just felt kind of silly. Of course, all week I've been praying with these scriptures, asking the Lord what He wants us to hear. And it's all about happiness, the Beatitudes. Aristotle said centuries ago, happiness is the one thing you and I desire in and of itself. Everything else is desired in relation to happiness. Happiness is the one thing you and I desire in and for itself. And everything else we desire is implicitly because we think we're going to be happy. Now, you might not want to do this exercise with me, but think of some of the most, cringeworthy decisions you've made in life, that when you think about them, it still kind of stings you. Well, believe it or not, why did you make that decision? Because you want to be happy. Now, hopefully you learned that maybe you weren't pursuing the right means to that happiness. And that's wisdom, right? We learn through time like, oh, that actually doesn't make me happy. It doesn't lead to happiness. Well, I find it so consoling that when Jesus begins to open his mouth to teach in the gospel, right now he's just been calling people, but now he's going to form a people through his words, his teaching, his example. And what we heard is the beginning of what will be 3 chapters in Matthew's Gospel, 5, 6, and 7, which we call the Sermon on the Mount. And he begins by, it's so consoling, taking this desire you and I have for happiness serious. Like the Lord wants to enlighten it, to educate it, to draw it forth, not into counterfeits, not into, all tangled up the ditch, but he wants to actually tell us, I know you desire to be happiness. I made you. And I want to show you what makes for happiness. So if I had to entitle this homily, I usually don't do that, but it would be Understanding the Beatitudes. And this morning I want to offer you 3, I'll call them interpretive clues that have been so helpful for me to understand what Jesus is giving us in the Beatitudes. First thing I think it's really important to notice is who's he talking to. Oftentimes Jesus is teaching and preaching to the crowds. Maybe people passing by and they see a crowd and they, who's this? And they start listening, and not this sermon. We're told that he called his disciples to him. And then he took them up even further to this top of the mountain where there's this place of clarity. What do I want to say? Well, these people who are listening to Jesus not only have experienced a passing attraction to him, they've actually set out to follow him. They have momentum in trust, right? This is really important. If the Beatitudes confound us at times, it might be a good question for us to say, like, do I have habits in my life that keep my eyes on the Lord, that actually help me to follow him? A psychologist told me recently It's actually caused me to think a lot about pastoral life and building up people in faith. But he says, unless it becomes a habit, it means it's just not important to you. So unless it becomes a habit, something I'm intentional about, it just means that, I don't know, it's maybe interesting to me, sort of attractive, but it's just not yet important. This past week, I met with a few different men who attended the retreat I led in October. And these meetings for me were so edifying. They were telling me what's happened in their life since that point. All the different things that are a regular, daily, weekly part of their lives that weren't before. Prayer, meeting with another group of men every week, different habits with their wives, their children. Literally, I felt Jesus saying, "Blessed are you." Like, it's wonderful. It's made me think a lot about even how we're planting seed and watering. And really, it's like, how do we invite people to habits of holiness? For some, that's going to mean just coming back to Sunday Mass. Otherwise, it's just not important yet. And for some, that might only come through your example and your invitation. So I want to encourage you. I have the great blessing of pastor of seeing so many, like, it's going to be important. It's going to be so important that our family, my personal life, this is what I'm doing every day. This is what I'm doing every week. It's not about a perfect scorecard, but you know from exercise, you know from anything important in your life, it has to become that. So that's the first way, by experience, we understand the Beatitudes, momentum in faith. Second interpretive clue, Jesus says 9 times, blessed are those. Well, the word blessed is the Greek makarios. And this word denotes happiness or blessedness, not in the sense of an emotional state, but rather a fortunate situation. In other words, this word is used to say, like, where you congratulate someone, you won the lottery. That's amazing, you know? Almost like enviable kind of position, you know? Now, this is very helpful because if we think of happiness as an emotional state, can you just identify how many emotions you went through yesterday? Jesus is offering us something much more solid. He's saying, look, you are blessed if you're not addicted to good feelings. You are blessed if you don't hold on to resentment. You are blessed if you're not caught in the vice of anger and lust. Like, that's a fortunate situation, and it's what I've come to offer you. So for me, this flips everything about the Beatitudes. Like, okay, they're a path to walk. He's giving me the direction. He's giving me he's like, this is it. And you're fortunate. Now, I want to point out something that's really helpful. At this point, we must be saying, who is he? What if I were to say someone, and there are people sitting out there today who are going through a significant grief, and I said, oh, you're so fortunate to be feeling this grief. Would that be loving? But who is he? He can say it. He's God. He means it. Like, he really means it. Okay, this leads to the third and final sort of interpretive clue. You know, even when we have momentum in faith and it's like, okay, I think I know by experience what he's talking about in these Beatitudes. I can identify connecting places in my life, in my experience. Well, even then, the Beatitudes become a little less intuitive as you start going along, don't they? How about, like, blessed are those who are persecuted? Anyone want to sign up for that? And it's really the ninth and final beatitude that flips everything, and it shows us what Jesus is doing. He no longer is saying, blessed are those who have this quality and disposition, focus and direction in their life. Now it becomes personal. This took me a long time to see. The ninth beatitude. Blessed are you when you are insulted and persecuted and hated because of me. You catch that? He's not just giving us these general qualities. He's saying it's all related to him. I remember Pope Benedict at World Youth Day in Cologne. He said, what are the Beatitudes? Ultimately, they're the portrait of Jesus himself. And they're an invitation to share his life, to have communion with him. Like all these Beatitudes, when I can really know the power of mercy, of like being in a lot of division in family, but being able to be a peacemaker, like it's a share in his life, it's a share in his power, it's a share in his intimate love. I asked a priest once recently who I walk with in spiritual direction, I just said, I don't know, like, what do you think you need? He's going through some hard things. He said, I just need the certainty that I know he's with me. Don't you feel the same in your life? Have you ever tasted that? I don't need all the chess pieces in life to be falling my way all the time. I don't need my investment portfolio. And by the way, mine's not that big, so you don't need to feel too sorry for me. But I don't need that even to be going the right way. I am not surrendering happiness to things I can't control. I would be a fool. My happiness is going to be about my relationship and being anchored in Jesus Christ. And then, come what may. Remember St. Francis, Brother Francis, what's true happiness? And he says, I'll tell you what true happiness is. It's me walking all night, and it's raining, and I'm cold, I'm tired, I'm hungry, and I finally come to the door of one of my friaries, and I knock, and they don't let me in. That's true happiness. And we say, he's crazy. Or has he reached a point of saying, yeah, because anyway, I was surrendering my happiness to these things that are so fluctuating, so out of my control, sometimes so trivial. I thought I was done a minute ago, but I want to give you this little addendum. You know, I have a niece. She's adopted from Ethiopia at 10 years old. Now she's in her mid-20s, and so she's kind of fun because there's still parts of her where she feels like, what is this culture that I'm living in? And she's been trying to, just to take a, NFC, AFC championship game, Super Bowl game. She's trying to get into it for the sake of relationship and friendship, And she says, I just can't help but think we're all sitting on this couch, just letting our whole emotions, be wired to what's coming at us in the screen. And then she says, by the way, don't they change teams every year anyways, these guys? And I think to myself, well, she's got a point. Are you happy? Do you believe Jesus wants you to be happy? Do you believe that? Like that he takes that very seriously in you. And he wants to lead you to follow him. Like follow him so much that it becomes important in your life. That you can look back 3 or 4 months from now and you have added a discipline because you want to stay close to him. Let's ask for that grace to sincerely follow him, that we can feel fortunate, connected to him in all the circumstances of our life.